I just want to start off by congratulating you on the passing of the Justice in Policing Act, which is a true game changer for America. My question is, if you were to become Vice President of the United States of America, what further changes would you make to our policing system to add on to the great progress that you've already made?
Yeah, because there's only so much you can do right now with the president in charge and Republicans in charge. If Democrats actually took over, specifically if you took over, what more would you do?
Well, I think especially the part of the bill where we're talking about accreditation and training, I would really want to delve into that and make sure that that training is robust, make sure that the accreditation and the standards, you know, it's one thing to pass a bill, but then you really have to get it enforced and implemented, and that's always a gap. So I never believe in just working on passing. I also believe in the implementation as well.
Now to this question about the police. John Cobalt, half of the John and Ken Show on KFI AM 640, I'm sure it's your favorite show, he wanted to ask you this about the LAPD.
The Los Angeles Times says the LAPD opened fire on 26 suspects last year, a 5-year low, and that number is down 77% since 1990. 22 of the 26 were armed with a gun or knife. Based on those numbers, do you think that the LAPD has made significant progress in the last 30 years?
Your thoughts?
Well, I do think the LAPD has made progress in the last 30 years, but I think there's a lot more that needs to be done. But it's not all about policing. So you know that one of the real big problems the police department has is they're dealing with all of these other issues like mental illness and substance abuse. And I don't think that it is fair for them to have to deal with that. I know that a lot of the violent encounters are with people who have mental illness challenges. And I think that if we provided more health care, if we provided more facilities, you know that the Twin Towers, what they call that, the most expensive mental institution in the United States.
So what does that actually look like? Is that a mental health professional being paired with an LAPD person? Because what happens when a mental health professional goes into a situation that turns violent if they don't have protection?
No, it's about prevention. So, for example, when we deinstitutionalize people from the big facilities that we used to have, we did it with the understanding that we were going to build community-based institutions, and we never did that. What we did instead was we built jails and prisons. So it's about preventing that violent episode from ever happening. Of course, if it reached the level of violence, you know, a police officer has to respond. But one of the things we also have in our bill is programs to teach police officers how to de-escalate situations. And yes, they might be paired with a mental health profession, but primarily it is prevention and treatment that is needed.
You know, one of the big questions also has been about this issue of police unions. LZ Granderson, who hosts a morning show on ESPN as a commentator on CNN, had this question on that issue.
Hi. My question is in regards to campaign contributions made by the police unions and whether or not you believe they are a helper when it comes to reforms or an obstacle. Thank you.
You know, I don't always think it's about the contributions. A lot of times people think it is, but you know, for most campaigns, you have campaign limits. Now, there's other ways you can contribute that does have a lot more significance. But what I think is more important than that, though, is the way police unions and conservative organizations, because it's not always about the unions either, have been able to pass state laws that have passed police officer Bill of Rights and other pieces of legislation that basically have tied the hands of a lot of elected officials. Now this isn't for us here, but in Minneapolis, for example, the police chief can fire somebody, the police officer can challenge it through arbitration and be put right back on the force. And so things like that that have happened across the country have made it far more difficult to deal with abusive officers and misconduct.
What do you make of the LA County District Attorney's race? We've seen Congressman Adam Schiff, Mayor Garcetti pulling back some of their support for Jackie Lacey. What do you make of that race?
Well, I think it's a controversial race. One of the things that's happening around the country is people are challenging sitting district attorneys because they're trying to get in people who are more progressive, who believe in reforms, who don't believe in relying on the criminal justice system to solve problems. One of the fundamental, in my opinion, conflicts of interest is district attorneys work very closely with police departments. They depend on them. They need them. And so then it becomes very hard for the district attorney to then file charges and prosecute police officers.
And of course, Jackie Lacey's biggest funder is police union. So who do you urge your people to support in that race?
Well, actually, I have stayed out of that race. It is the most high-profile district attorney race in the country.